Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Mr. Colin Dow, the big man himself, the rad dad of all rad dads. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah. Quick wardrobe change, so we're quasi-matching.
Yep. Oh, you just had to throw me under the bus in the
Commensurate
first 5
level. No, I
seconds.
think it was a flannel kind of day.
It is. I mean, look, man. Anytime two dudes are getting together to talk about life and dadhood, like you've got to be in your natural element. For me, that's flannel. For you, I think that's flannel and a much more manly beard than I. So I couldn't let you outdo me.
I don't know. I feel like that beard, if you gave that beard a run,
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. It's the Brad Pitt version of a beard, kind of scraggly, kind of patchy, but
yeah,
oddly sexy.
yeah, still provocative. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for making time today. And I think us talking, for me, by the way, as the host of this, is kind of this poetic thing, because after I published my first podcast, we have a mutual friend, a woman named Dagny, and she kind of was the interface between me launching this and you finding this conversation. And the spirit of this whole thing is about, as you've kind of, your attention has been caught by the visual of guys sitting around a campfire, chopping it up, sorting out the hardest problems in life, striving to be great dads. And then I'm into 15 published as of the day today, 15 podcasts published, and here we are doing our own version of this. So what a treat to be with you, buddy.
Indeed. Very serendipitous the way that we wound up here, I will say. Dagny was a fun friend of mine in college. Nothing, very platonic. I'm not saying anything like that, but she's awesome. Drawing on our Montana connections, and she threw up a screenshot of your first podcast on Instagram, and I was immediately attracted to it, right? Just because of some of the things you mentioned, right? The illustration of dads trying to figure out how to do this dad thing better and around a campfire, which is where my soul is happy. And I can't remember if it was you or your first guest who was also coincidentally dating one of my best friend's now wife, who shall remain nameless for your listeners, but lots of points of connection that are very odd and fun and makes it feel right to be here. So
yeah,
pumped to be on, man.
Serendipitous indeed. Another time we'll talk about all of that stuff. Well, hey, listen, you're in your garage, you're working from home, you've got your gym nearby, you've got your office in your realm. I think it's the perfect setting to just jump into life together. So tell us a little bit about your vantage on things, like your profession, the kind of the realm that you work in, and how that interfaces with your role as fatherhood, just to give people a little bit of context, and then we're getting into the deep end.
Oh man. Well, like my 30-second elevator biography is I'm a Montana boy, right? And married a girl who inspired us to dream and do big things, and that led us to Boise, Idaho in about 2014 after we got married. Spent a few years doing the corporate life, and then we gave it all up, quit our jobs to go work on a cruise ship doing kind of humanitarian work or social impact work down in Cuba and the Dominican Republic. Did that for a while, moved back, decided we wanted to start a family. Got into some really great new jobs, new career paths, and by the grace of God, got pregnant after what was kind of a struggle or a challenging season. Ended up being able to do it naturally. twice, and as a result, we've got two beautiful little girls. My wife's in the financial industry, financial profession, and I'm in medical technology for one of the big three, working with some of our biggest customers on the West Coast. So yeah, life is good. I could complain, but nobody'd listen, and it'd be totally unfounded. So I feel pretty lucky.
Cool. Game on. Riddle with me a little bit on, I know sometimes brewing up a fam is a challenge, you know. What was that experience like for you guys? The struggle and the experience. I know some people probably are relating to that as they're working towards it and try to, even if you're successful eventually, there's still some, some lingering maybe challenges or just thoughts. I mean, what was the experience like for you?
Yeah, I think it can sure take a toll on folks. You know, you hear all these romanticized versions of people's parenthood journeys like happening naturally before they wanted it to, and so easily, and over and over again. For us, we were kind of sitting on the sideline watching our friends get pregnant over and over again, and we just couldn't, and it was stressful. I mean, it went without saying that it was stressful on my wife, and she probably felt an undue sense of responsibility for making that happen, and that made me feel bad. And ultimately, I think, retrospect is 2020, and I think we both feel really confident in saying that it was, you know, fate, the universe, God's timing, whatever you want to call it, whatever your listeners want to believe in. But it happened when it needed to, the way it needed to, and we're really lucky. Um, but for those folks that have to go through kind of a more mechanical process, let's call it, I I can't imagine. I mean, that's hard, right? Like we went halfway down that path with a process called IUI, or what I affectionately termed the turkey baster. My wife's going to hate me for saying that out loud, but it is what it is. So we got a taste of that, and it was a challenge for sure. But regardless of how you get to parenthood, I think that the net result is the same, and it's pretty beautiful and pretty life changing. So glad glad we're
Right on.
lucky.
Well, I'm glad it worked out and allowed us to have amongst many other things, I suspect, but at least a very blatant shared affinity for raising good kiddos. And here we are. So that was challenging, I know, because I'm about to ask a question that's going to sound similar, but that was in the past.
Yeah.
Prior to having kids, that's, an obstacle. You guys overcame that. Colin, for you in the last, I don't know, I say since you became a dad, what has been the most challenging aspect of fatherhood that you've experienced? And, what's the wisdom that lies therein?
Oh man, I think we were rapping about this a little bit before we started, and I'll say it now so that your listeners can kind of understand how this interview might unfold. But there's a lot of great dads you've had on here that seem to have a lot more wisdom and experience maybe than I do, and I'm certainly not going to discount some of the things that I'm learning and that I can talk about. But I think when it comes to this conversation, like, I'm going to be really honest about some of the things that we've struggled through and that I continue to struggle through. A, so that I work it out on my own and maybe get closer to an answer, but also so that maybe some of your dads out there, or our fellow dads out there, feel like, oh shit, I'm not alone, man. This dude's feeling it like it's normal, right?
Mm,
Um, but to answer your question, man, I think one of the bigger challenges that has persisted since Katie and I had our first daughter, Loxley, is trying to figure out balance, right? And we both work, adult jobs, like big, high demand jobs. We both care a lot about our career and doing a good job. And we both care immensely about being really good parents. And sometimes it can feel like there's just not enough bandwidth or time or energy in the day to do both really well. And it can be really hard to feel like the scales are balanced in terms of who's putting the same amount of effort into the home life, right? And I think Loxley was probably 6 or 8 months old, and this was just eating away at some of our joy on the Dow home front. And we were driving down from the mountains, and we were listening to this podcast on how families need to like have a real heart to heart conversation around like what are your family values, like what do you value as a dude, what does she value as a woman, and like what are you going to how are you going to knit those things together and make those your the values that you stand for, and how are those going to guide your behaviors, right? And I remember, she came up with a handful five, I think, and fun was one of hers. And I remember feeling like, man, I'm not having a lot of fun right now. Like those first 8 months were tough, right? I was like, I love that as a value for us, but I need to get better there. And it made me think, uh, I've got to change some things with regard to how I'm thinking or how I'm perceiving our contribution to this family we're building. And one of my five values is fairness. And in my wife's infinite wisdom, she said, tell me more about that. I said, well, like making sure that we're each contributing equally. And what unfolded, man, was this really great conversation where we realized that like I was keeping score, right, on a daily basis, almost down to like the hour. Like if I change one diaper, she's got to change the next. Or if I, woke up in the middle of the night, which I rarely did, like she had to do something, right? And when that wasn't happening, I had this unvoiced expectation that wasn't getting met. And my resentment and frustration was just escalating, and she didn't know it. Um, and she probably had some of those things too, but I didn't deal with them as well as a dude. I'll admit that. And this conversation led us to realize that like rather than looking at contributing to the family and keeping score on a narrow time window, like by the hour, by the day, by the week, like we need to remember like this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And the degree to which each of us contribute and are engaged and active and like on, let's call it, needs to be thought of in like a much broader time frame, right? Like seasons, like years. Like there's going to be years when Katie's doing a lot more because the girls are prepubescent and dealing with stuff that daddy doesn't know how to talk about, right? And I just need to know that like we're going to trade off and on, but it might not feel equal on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Is that I talked for like 15 minutes there. That was too much, man. I'm sorry.
Not at all, dude. It wasn't 15. No, it's good. I feel like recognizing the balance, although there are blatantly things that only moms can do and some things maybe only dads can do. So is it supposed to be 50-50 exactly over this macro season time frame, or is it is there some unique, I don't know, some unique functions and roles that only dads can play? What's your sense of that?
Oh man. I mean, yeah, I think the answer is yes, right? I think there's things that moms just naturally do better than dads, and vice versa. You said it a lot more clearly in about 3 seconds than I took 13 minutes to do, but like it's not 50-50, right? Especially on a micro scale. On a macro, it might end up being 50-50 over time. Like once you're kicking the kids out of the house at 18, like you'll probably look back and be like, man, we did that together. But on a day to day basis, right, it's always going to ebb and flow. And so I think coming to that understanding as early as we did was really helpful. And for any new dads, I think that's something to think about because it might help you reduce some of the challenges on the home front if you're having any. So, I mean, what about you and your wife? Like, you've got Leo. He's like, what, 8, 10 months old now?
He's 8 months on the 1st of June, which is days ago when we record this. But I mean, it's a partnership, but it's not equal at all, partly because Mackenzie's breastfeeding him
Yeah.
mostly 100%. Although this morning she ran out for a chore. She went and picked up an early Father's Day gift for me, swooped up a
Well,
uh, really, really great ice bath, like a formal
oh,
ice bath
oh,
device. I just been in this horse trough in the backyard, it's like,
same, same.
so which is, that's the only thing that I really fit in, it feels like. But so she went out for this chore and left a bottle. And he'll take some, but it's breast milk pumped. So
Yeah,
she's doing the bulk of, sustenance for him.
sure.
Um, and not even the bulk, literally all of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And as being that as a focal point for our strategy, middle of the night, he wakes up, he's hungry, I'm nearby, I hear it, but she's taking the soothing moment, and so she's doing a little bit more probably than I am, and then frankly, we both work from home, and there's
Mm,
days where when I'm working from home and I'm on with a client. I'm on a Zoom call, taking an entire 25 people through a training program. It's like she's upstairs, perhaps chomping on a spreadsheet and working through some things, and he's running around or falling asleep
yeah,
on her chest. And so we've got a bit of a rhythm with our own life, but it is admittedly a little bit more on her than me right now.
yeah.
But the word, I think we keep going, are we in partnership? Do you feel supported by me? Do I feel supported by you?
Mm,
Um, what can I do for you? How can I give you a reprieve, right?
yeah.
And there's moments of that we're designing in for sure. And not
Well,
just moments, right?
tell me more about that. Like, how are you designing those in?
I mean, it's just it's ongoing communication throughout the day. It's like, when are you going to have a
Oh,
break? Can you come up and spell
sure.
me? When are you done for the day? Can you take him for an hour and let me go do zero things and just be?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she's making those requests, and I'm doing my best to fulfill them. But that's like in terms of like diapers, it's like whenever there's a diaper, clean it, right? So we're not really that partnership, it's still not 50-50. He's probably with her a little bit more, so just by nature of that, she's changing more diapers. But in terms of like the stuff that you have to do, it has been more on Mac. But in terms of like the adventure and the play and the you know uh, bath times and things like that, we're splitting up a lot of the time with them, or just we're there together. So it feels
yeah,
it feels pretty good, but it has been a challenge to figure out, like, what does partnership actually mean at this stage?
yeah,
What's based on our arrangement, based on our approach, based on some of the unique factors, or some of the factors in our world. Like, well,
yeah,
what does part not let's just not assume what partnership is. Let's define it a bit.
yeah.
And that's going to change. She's in a high performing corporate job. I'm in a high performing, I work for myself, but I serve corporate America. So we're balancing that, sorting that out, figuring out life a bit. But what I really like that you did, though, you had like a formal exercise, a formal sit down with each other. I guess you were driving and listening and talking, but how formal was it, right? Besides the fact that it happened versus not happening, you sat down and articulated your 5 values to give yourselves some sort of foundational understanding of your perspective. Was that why five? Uh,
I think it
and
was.
what was the process to get
Yeah,
there?
I'll kind of give you some more of the context. So we got a little place up in the mountains that's 2 hours north, and it's one of my favorite places to go to. Not only because it's in the mountains around trees and there's bonfires and s'mores and all the things, but also because it's 2 hours of uninterrupted, no cell phone service time with my wife, with the girls in the back, and we talk. Right, we're forced to just talk and not be distracted. And on one of the trips, um, we listen to some podcast, as everybody seems to do, including the people that are ironically listening to us right now. Um, and it was just a topic that was on the podcast we pulled up at the moment, and it kind of encouraged people to think about, what are the 5 values that you want to define your marriage or define your own behaviors, right? Like what you stand for. And
Colin,
it's a great exercise.
what's a not your list yet. I want to hear your list and maybe Katie's list, but like what are give me a list of like 10 values that are possible values to pick from, just so the listener can start thinking like, well, shoot, what are my values? What are some examples of possible
Well,
values?
I forget exactly what we said that day in terms of those five. The only one I really remember is fairness. That felt like it was very top of mind just because of the season of life we were in and some of the challenges that I was feeling internally, right? But I read a book 5 or 6 years ago by Mark Manson called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Can I
Hmm.
say that on your podcast? I think I can.
Say it again if you want.
Um, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, right? And anyway, like the whole premise of the book is like understanding what you stand for and what you care about so that you know what you can say no to free up time to do the things
Mm.
you do care about more. And after reading that book, like I went through this exercise internally for several months trying to figure out, like, okay, what does Colin Dow stand for? And I came up with four. And so to answer your question, I'll just share mine. And I love alliteration, right? So um, depth, duty, diversity, and disruption,
Mm.
right? So like when it comes to depth, like I love chewing the fat with people. I love doing life with people and not just like the surface, like, hey, how's work? How's your day? What's going on? Like I love these conversations, right? Like I want to have more of that in my relationships in life. Duty, right? Like I feel like we are our brother and sister's keeper. Like I have a duty to my kids. Because of that, I have a duty to create a world where other kids have the same kind of opportunity or community or nurturing environment as much as I can. Um, you can extrapolate duty every direction you want. Diversity, right? I love getting your perspective down there in Denver and with your background and the way you're doing life with Leo and Kenzie. And I love people of the world, right? Like I talked a little bit about how Katie and I were down in Cuba and the Dominican Republic and spent some time in Africa and like remembering that people do life differently and that there's virtues of that way of life that you can glean and incorporate, like that's a good thing to know. And then disruption, like I love taking shit apart and putting it back together in a new way and keeping things fresh. So to answer your question again in like 13 minutes, that's what I'd say.
Hey man, you're the featured guest, so you get the stage as long as you want. Don't no qualms from this side of things. And it's good stuff. It's like so is there a process that you went through or that you recommend dads go through, perhaps parents go through to extract these values? I mean, you could just sit around and write them down and then share them, but was there a little bit more formal ritual, or do you now have one perhaps that you advise, friends or
Well, I mean, I'd
confidants in?
encourage anybody to pick up that book by Mark Manson or Mason, I forget.
Yeah,
Again, let me
Mason.
say it again: the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
Um, that's always fun. Um, for me, it wasn't like a formal like sit down and do a journal exercise. It was like, hey, what are things that I've done in my life that like have made me who I am, that stand out as like pivotal moments in who I've become, and what themes can I draw from those that make me feel confident in saying like, yeah, that's a value that I can stand up and say I stand for, or that is important to me. Um, and it's important to like tell anybody listening to this thinking like, yeah, that's a good idea, but it's a challenge for me, that there's aspirational values and then there's values that you feel like you currently demonstrate. And one of my greatest weaknesses that drives my wife absolutely crazy is that like I have a hard time saying I'm something positive because there's this fear that people would be like, well, no, you're not. You don't. you're not a guy that demonstrates disruption or duty or like, well, yeah, maybe I'm not, but I want to, right? It's an aspirational value. Um, and I think to the extent that we can, as guys, like plant a flag and say, like, I might not stand for this today, but I want to. Because one day when our kids are older, like to bring this back to the theme, like I want my kids to look back and be like, yeah, my dad, he stood for that stuff. And I learned from him how to do this life thing better because of it. And I think that's the reason that that exercise is important for me. And I think it probably could be for a lot of dudes wasting time listening to us banter.
Yeah, indeed. I like it. Yeah, admitting, yeah, currently, without a shadow of a doubt, I'm exuding XYZ value. And at the same time, I'm aspiring to
Yeah.
also, exude XYZ value or ABC value, so that aspirational, that's fair. But
Yeah.
let's admit it. Tall, strong, handsome, seem very gentle, very kind guy. You're so humble. You're almost Colin Dow. I don't even know you that well, but I feel like you're holding back this giant grizzly bear heart of
Uh,
yours. Ah,
that's the shit that drives my wife crazy.
yeah,
Um, Look, man, it comes out when it needs to come out, but
good,
I also
cool.
want to be the guy that like lets his actions speak louder than his words, not
Oh,
talk about it, but actually be about it. So
yeah.
anyway, let me ask you, man, like in Thrival Concepts, you're talking to corporations, businesses, and stuff about communication, and I'm sure mission, vision, values. Like I'm sure Dave Moper has Momper. Sorry, is
Easy
that
going.
French?
It's Flemish, it's German, it used to have a DE on the front of it.
Mm.
De mon père. I don't know. So who
Ooh, let's
knows?
stick with that. De mon père.
Yeah.
Um,
David de mon père.
David, de mon père. What would you say yours are? Like if
Well,
we're rapping about values for another couple minutes, like
yeah,
what does Dave stand for?
I wrote play down. Play is
Mm.
huge. Being playful, even in my professional realm. Like yesterday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I had a 2-day program with a big energy company, and then let's see, yesterday half day with a mining company. So coincidentally, two kind of energy related organizations. It was all men. It was now there was some women yesterday, but nevertheless, the first batch was all dudes, and it was like I don't need to be serious, even in a
Mm.
professional setting, the whole time. And in fact, I think one of my knacks is being playful and kind of silly in a way that opens up, that softens the tension and opens up the possibilities. And then at the same time, the other one I had written down was work ethic, like getting work done,
Mm.
right? And I value it. I still struggle with it at times, and especially now I'm balancing, you know, being a dad and a husband, and I also work for myself, so no one's holding me accountable except for
Yeah,
me. So, but working hard and being focused, I value and I strive for, and yet it's not always perfect.
yeah.
Um, Certainly, like
Can
connections or
I?
relationships.
Yeah,
Yeah, do you want to riff on one of those?
yeah. I want to riff on play a little bit
Yeah,
because, like, how old are you? I've never asked.
43.
43. Okay, you got me by a couple years. I'm still a young, virile, 38-year-old guy. But sometimes in my mind, I'm like 27. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, I feel like my body and this job I'm in and this house I'm in and all the bills I pay, it's like, dude, you are old. And I wonder if the rest of your listeners feel this way too. It would make me feel better if they did, but like in the core, like deep down, I'm still like in my 20s, man. Like I'm still in my prime. And then you're humbled every time you're changing a poopy diaper and you're getting shit on your knuckles and you're like, I am not in my prime. But do you ever feel that way? Like,
Yeah. Well, I feel the contrast of going. in spirit and heart, I feel youthful.
Yeah.
And I still feel like I'm a kid in certain ways, sorting out the world, learning about the world and myself. Although I have a good sense of who I am, I still feel youthful. And then my body, my bills, the house, the
Yeah.
responsibilities. Yeah, it's a bit confronting, but it's like, um, it is pretty fun to have a little one to put things into perspective, or to even just mix up your perspective big time and say, well, what does it really mean to be youthful? Or what does it
Yeah.
really mean to play? What is it? So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think I
I'm with you.
I think I learned that from my girls. You know, at 4 and 2, like all they want to do is play. Like last night after dinner, my oldest Loxley set up an obstacle course where you had to do 12 different things. And like, look, at the end of the day, like we got them fed. Our default is like, okay, let's jump into dishes, laundry, pajamas, all this stuff. And it was really nice to like calm that inner voice saying, okay, let's do this, do that, do that, do that. And just be like, okay, no, let's play. Let's do what our 4-year-old wants to do and indulge her. And dude, it was probably like the best 15 minutes that we've had after dinner in months, right? And um, so kudos to you for saying play and finding ways to incorporate it more. And I hope that anybody out there thinking about this like is encouraged to do the same thing because it's important, man. Like that's how we relate to our kids, and I think that's how we grow that bond. So
There's you probably recognize Robin Williams, the old comedian.
yeah,
Rest in peace. Yeah, I mean his whole thing. There's this. I feel like I might have said this on a podcast historically, but I was talking about it recently, one way or the other. There's a great video on YouTube where he articulates that the world is open to play. The world is open for play if
mm,
you approach it that way. And he was such a yes and kind of guy, an improv kind of guy that, you know, um, I might not always be in a playful mood, and yet my kiddos, I mean, Leo's only 8 months, so he doesn't even necessarily know what play looks like a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, but to let them lead play,
yeah,
they're gonna be the champions of play for a long time. And to let, follow their lead, I can't wait for that.
yeah,
Granted, at the same time, Leo's already, now he's a little boy, he's already kind of, dude, the amount of handfuls of chest hair, he's learning how to just like, not doing it on purpose, but
yeah,
he's definitely not gentle. And I can kind of throw him into a pile of pillows or in the sheets, and he's just like, yes, more, give
yeah,
me that. Like, so he's already in a playful mind, but I can't wait to see what he's going to be like when another 8 months comes around and
yeah.
he's walking and
Well,
running and so forth.
I'm not like trying to proselytize anybody at all, but like there's this really famous old book out there that encourages people to have faith like a child, right? And I think a lot about why that would be encouraged. And I think it's because like there's a purity and a simplicity to it and like something that connects us to like creation and our nature and the universe that you can only do when you quiet that adult voice in the back of your mind that says like let's do the laundry, let's get the house clean, let's you know get lunches packed for tomorrow, and like just put that aside and like be present, like be in the moment, be playful, like enjoy where you're at in the moment. And for me, like that is an aspirational value. I am not good at that. My wife will tell you I'm not good at that. She is better than I, but we could both be better. And um, I love that we're talking about this because, like all your other podcasts, I come away thinking like, oh, okay, that's a nugget, that's a pearl that I need to grab onto. And by the way, kudos to you for as a dad of 8 months, already having what 14, 15, 20 episodes on this for other dads to learn from and be better. And like
Right on. Yeah.
just a bit of kudos. I remember one of your episodes, I forget who the guest was, but they were talking about like, do you want to be a peaceful warrior in a garden or a gardener in a war? And I was like, oh, dude, got me fired up. Like, okay, I'm a peaceful warrior in a garden, or
Yeah,
warrior in a peaceful garden.
there we
Um,
go. Yeah,
so
exactly.
anyway,
Well, I'm curious. You said faith, and to have faith like a kid, unadulterated and whatnot. I'm curious where a lot of your inspiration for fatherhood best practices comes from. Putting your faith into, um, I don't know, maybe actual faith or father figures you've had historically. What are the roots of your fatherhood value set? Who are the people or the stories or the experiences that led you to have the values that you have today?
mm, dude, what a question.
And
Um,
Montana, I mean, you could probably just bask in the open skies of Montana and get all the wisdom you need. So that let's admit it's at least some Montana-esque, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's
look,
God's country, right? So like the ultimate father, like that's where he vacations. So
yes,
um,
yes, indeed.
let's, dude, you're gonna open a can of worms that maybe you didn't want to open. But another part of my story that is maybe worth sharing is that I lost my dad at 19, right? And he he had about 10 years of failing health before he finally succumbed to all of it. Which means starting at like age 9 or 11, like my dad's ability to do the things that a lot of other dads did was already starting to go downhill, like to not to not be the same. And he struggled with diabetes and managing it. And long story short, over the course of my high school career, lost both of his legs, kidneys failed, multiple open heart surgeries, and passed away my sophomore year at college. And so um, I will tell you candidly, a little awkward to put it out there for the world, but I think I'm still learning from my dad because I didn't have the same kind of experience that guys like you did with your dad who are still around and you're still, great friends and doing things together. But like I'm having to learn from my dad posthumously
Hmm.
by things that he did when he was still alive and things that he struggled with. And like I'm learning more about what he struggled with, and like it feels more relevant to me. And looking back on what he did and didn't do in many cases, um, has been an inspiration for me, right? Like not only in terms of the things that he did well that I respect and value and admire, but also some of the things that, like, if we're going to be honest, he didn't do great. Um, and that's been a lesson, right? Like there is no book for this parenthood thing, this fatherhood thing. And like it's been really important for me personally to just remember that we're all doing the best we can with what we've got. And there's this concept of sins of the father, right? Like, or in other words, things that plague me, plagued my dad, and things that plagued him probably plagued his dad. And like these, this baggage, this weight kind of gets passed down unless you break the cycle. And so personally, I'm trying to break some cycles when it comes to how I show up as a dad. But in addition to that, like I had the benefit of growing up with some dudes who have become like my best friends starting in high school and still today. And their dads were an influence on me, and I've learned from them. I've learned from my uncles, um, one of whom is not around anymore. One is, and I think anywhere that there's like a really good male role model, like there's something to learn, because society will tell us like one thing about what it looks like, and oftentimes it's another. Um, the right way is another. Um, and so having those role models is incredibly important. And one of the reasons I get so fired up about your dreams to do this Fireside Fathers which I hope me mentioning out loud and putting out in the universe for your listeners is inspiration for you to do soon. But yeah,
So, what was your dad's name, by the way?
Jim,
Yeah. Rest in peace to Jim.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, man. Um, so whether it was your dad, Jim, your uncles, your buddies' fathers, your buddies, what are some of those specific things that you think, I learned not to do that, and I learned to definitely do this?
Hmm.
One in each category, two in each categories. What are the lessons that you're bringing forth?
Hmm. Boy, that's a question I wish I had a couple hours to ruminate on. But if you're going to ask me for a knee-jerk reaction, I will say that my dad did a really good job teaching me the importance of finish. Um, Anything I raised my hand and said I wanted to do, particularly a sport, right? Because that was in the season of life that I still had him around. Um, that was what I was doing most, right? Football, wrestling, track, whatever. And there were often moments when I was like, I hate wrestling. I want to be done like midway through the season. And dude, no, that was a hard stop no for Jim Dow. If you commit yourself to something, like you do not give up. You do not stop until it's over. You don't have to do it the next year, but if you're in it, you're in it. And I think that mentality has served me well in my work world, um, in my role as a husband, right? There's no giving up on this relationship that is my wife, that is my marriage. Like it can be hard, but like I'm in it. Like till death do us part, right? Like I'm finishing this. Um, Unfortunately, I married a woman who like is my better two-thirds, and
Mhm.
I outpunted my coverage in football lingo. But I know, like, I'm in this. Um, I'm in it with my kids. Like, I committed. I'm going for it. So that's one. I think in terms of like things not to do, look, there's there's a lot of things that I think I could say I shouldn't do and wouldn't do as a result of learning from the errors of others. And I think for the sake of their memory and reputation, I'll keep those to myself. But just let it be noted, you can certainly learn from both.
Indeed.
How about you? Who's inspired you more outside of your dad to like do the things about fatherhood as best as you can, or better, or differently?
I have three uncles on my dad's side, two of which have kids, one doesn't. So I've had some great father figures there. And no, I'm sure there's some things I could try to uncover or complain about that I wouldn't do it that way. But for the most part, emulating their style, and they raised between my two uncles that have kids, one has five, one has two, and they're
Hmm.
all loving, healthy, happy, committed, convicted people. And yeah, there's a lot of good things on my dad's side. My mom has my uncle Dave has passed away on that side, unfortunately. My mom's got, I'm trying to think if one half brother still alive and one sister still alive. So I mean, both sides of the family, great uncle figures, great father figures, and my grandfathers. And you know, then I'm trying to think if there was a dad or two in my friend group that I really was drawn to. I mean, I had a bunch of good dad figures in high school. I was thinking of like Tom Baker, who's my best friend in high school, Bubba Baker, his dad, Tom. Just the nicest guy, creative guy. Um, I've been surrounded by good dudes to mimic, to emulate, right? Um, I can say in a somehow, some way, the majority of my memories are all positive of most father figures out there. The firsthand direct experience, right?
Yeah.
I never saw too many dads getting caught up in like, I don't know, drug or alcohol abuse or physical abuse or
Yeah.
the good fortune of that. So,
Yeah.
and then yeah, there's no one of my past podcasts interviews was like there's no book on fatherhood, although there's one book, right? You know, the Bible would my friend George would say like it'll tell you everything you need to know about everything
Hmm.
there is to, so maybe but that's not necessarily my lane, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so I haven't necessarily leaned on that wisdom, but I find myself trusting kind of this idea that any effort I'm contributing to, I don't know, the role of fatherhood, is it is it is it an abundance factor? Is it adding, is it like a ripple effect in a positive way, or am I consuming energy and stifling and kind of like, is it inhibiting or reducing the possibility of goodness? That's
Hmm.
my guiding light, I suppose, even
Yeah.
outside of fatherhood, right?
Yeah.
Even
Oh,
outside of fatherhood. So
that
that's how I
that
think about it. That's how I'm thinking about it.
I love
Um,
that, man. I love it because it's been top of mind for me a lot lately. Like, and by the way, like I can, as we're talking, I can just imagine anybody who's listening, like with their earphones in the gym, driving down the road, on a run, whatever, listening to us banter about our own stories. But I hope that they're all thinking about the men in their life who have kind of demonstrated what it means to be a good dad or a good husband, because both are equally important, right?
mhm,
In fact, might be more important to be a good husband because the trickle down effect of that is being a good dad.
true.
Um, so I hope that folks are thinking about who those people are and what they want to learn and take forward. But when it comes to some of the things you were just saying, man, um, I think of it as like moving humanity forward, right? Like, what are we doing that at the end of the day, when our 80 some years on this planet are over, people will look back and say, "Oh, Dave did this," or "Colin did this," and you want to think that it's additive, right? That we did something to contribute rather than taking away from or making it worse, right? And um, as a young man, like I would have told you that what Colin was going to contribute to this world was big and bold and ambitious, and it was going to get a lot of attention, and people were going to write books about it, and he'd be the governor of Montana or senator or something. Um, and now I think as I lean into this season of life I'm in, which is being a dad and a husband, like I realized that like very few people are going to talk about me 10 years after I'm gone. But if there's anybody that is, it's my kids and it's my wife. And so why would I care now what other people think about me when later they won't give two shits? The most important thing I can do to move humanity forward, I think, is to pour into my girls and teach them what I've learned about this life and how to do it best so that they can live a life that moves humanity forward in their own way, right? And I think that's the ripple effect that I'm starting to see and feel really comfortable with, and it gets me fired up about being a better dad. And it's what encourages me to tune into your podcast so I can learn from other dudes. Like, what are they doing better than I am? How can I incorporate that into my world? Um, so, but anyway, again, I'm just rambling here, but kudos
I,
to you for
I'm
sitting
with
down.
you on this notion. Like, there's the world. There's always attention that the world needs, like we need to tend to the world as a community, as a society, as a world, we need to tend to the world to make it better. And some might say it's an absolute mess right now, and maybe it always has been. And it's like, well, what effect do I really have on the world? Am I going to bitch about things on social media? Am I going to, create a movement? Am I going to jump into a role like you know, on the chessboard, like a senator or a governor? Like all those things are possible, but the most blatant and direct way to transform the future is to raise legends. That's kind of why, frankly, why one of the aspects of this was raising legends. I want to explore leadership and adventure and raising legends with fellow fathers. That doesn't mean that that the kids we raise end up being like, um, known by everybody and that they're heroes of the world, but that they are contributing members, notable, additive, generative, creative,
Yeah,
value add kind of
yeah,
um, pieces to the puzzle, and that
yeah,
if we do our job right and intentionally as fathers, the rest of the rest of itself, kind of the rest of the puzzle works itself out,
yeah.
right?
It occurs to me that like, that's why I love this conversation, because it occurs to me that to do that well requires that we show our kids what that looks like and demonstrating it in our actions, not just our words, right? And when we do that, we're moving humanity forward in our own way. We're being generative, creative, uh, productive. Um, we're doing it for their benefit, for their learning, but the world also benefits, I think, if we do it right. Um, so yeah, all right, you're making me feel a little bit better about about my lot in life. So thanks.
So, Colin Dow, the big man himself, I'm looking at you, get a sense of who you are, and I know your history involved a little bit of athletics. You just touched on it,
I
wrestling
did. Oh
and
yeah,
track and what
yeah,
was that? And football probably in high school. And
yeah.
then you got into some college football, you played some college football, and then you told me you had a cup of coffee's worth of professional time on the Bengals. That's pretty cool. So,
Yeah, yeah. I have a hard time even like talking about that because it was so infinitesimally short that it feels like I'm trying to be something I'm not. But yeah, I got invited to Cincinnati to play with them. Ended up having of all things, a congenital fusion between my L3 and L4 vertebrae. Congenital means it was like I was born with it,
uh,
and just by virtue of being like 317 pounds and trying to squat a house and everything, like it gave me fits. And it got worse in my time in Cincy, and I was a low a low pick for those guys. And so rather than potentially pay out a bunch of money in insurance,
yeah.
they decided to give me chicken or beef, which is the NFL's way of saying they're sending you packing, and you can either choose chicken or beef for your flight home. So
Well,
um,
funny.
it was fun. It was great. Learned a lot. Had some good stories.
Wait, you were 315 at one point? That's a large man. Holy cow. You can't be 315.
329 at my biggest. My buddy Colt Anderson, uh, in the kindest of ways, told me I was way too slow when I was trying to, be a pulling guard out there on the edges, trying to tackle guys like him. He consequently like played 9 years in the league and is still coaching in the NFL for the Titans now. So he turns out he knew a thing or two, but yeah, I was a big human.
Yeah, a hardy man. But I wish you didn't have to pick between chicken and beef and that you were still kicking ass. But the real context, I just wanted people to understand, the nature of your athletic journey, and then curious how you're taking the spirit of sports competition, the work ethic, finishing the job, finishing the season, the tenacity it takes. How do you see that correlating to the role of being a great dad and raising, you're raising daughters. Maybe they're not going to be playing on the gridiron, but they still are going to benefit from, tenacity, perseverance, grit in some capacity. So how are you infusing that kind of stuff into a 2 and a 4-year-old? Is
Yeah.
it even top of mind right now? Or are you?
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally. It's a really good question, and it's one that Katie and I talk about with some frequency. And the question is typically like, how do we want to raise our girls, right? Like we've talked a lot about values that obviously play into it, but like, what do we want our girls to without a doubt learn from us and take into their lives? And my wife was an incredible collegiate athlete herself. She was a golfer, despite what some might say it is a sport. Shocking to me, but I've come to learn that it is because I suck at it. But she's fantastic, right? And one of the things that her dad and her mom taught her that has served her really well that we want to teach our girls is that no one is better than you, but you are better than nobody. So we want them to feel like they can walk into a room, an event, a building, an environment, a boardroom, and carry themselves in such a way that it doesn't matter who they're talking to. Could be the president of the United States, could be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but they can stand tall because they know who they
Hmm.
are. And as important, when they leave that room and they walk by a janitor pushing them up, they look them in the eye and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" Like they show that same respect to anybody else. Um, so that's one thing that I think sports has taught us, right? Like if you're successful in sports, it's because you've learned that like it takes a team and nobody's job on that team is any more important than the other person, right? The ball boy at the University of Montana had a job and the quarterback had a job. I had a job. To win, everybody needed to do their job. And I think that no matter what that job is, like it deserves respect, it deserves recognition, and it deserves to be done as best as you possibly can. And so I think that those are some things we're trying to teach our girls. And also doing hard things, right? Like I want my girls to know that they can do hard things. Because let's face it, like the world is not always an easy place. Like there are going to be hard things that they encounter, probably harder than maybe you and I did, right? Based on the way some things could go. And I think it's incredibly important that we teach them that they have the grit and the resilience and the tools and the tenacity to do the hard things that will be required of them. And the better job we do of teaching them that early, the more successful they're going to be in the long run. So
Brilliant. Yeah.
whether it's 2-a-days in the middle of August and sweltering heat and wildfire smoke in Missoula, Montana, or whatever else, right?
Amen. Yeah. Doing the hard things. I feel like that almost is, it's like resilience and grit. If,
Totally.
if if nothing else, I want them to have that. I also want them to be compassionate and kind and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's the warrior and the guardian kind of thing. I want them to be. Um, I have a little boy, so it's funny to say this about little girls too. But like, I want my kids, even say I have a little girl, if we have a number two, it's like I want them both to be savages, but graceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's funny, like we live in a different time, right? Like society has moved itself forward in a lot of ways. One of the ways that I think we're still learning how to navigate as well as we should is that women are savages, right? Like my wife, she is a badass. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, she's just a badass, right? And like, gone are the days where like the woman stays home and takes care of that. Like that works for people, and that's awesome because let me tell you, that is not an easy job. Like I couldn't do it, um, but like we both show up in the world similar ways now, right? Um, and teaching women to take on this like mentality, or little girls, let's call them little girls, that they can be whatever they want to. Like it took me a couple of years to convince my daughter that like not all doctors are men, right? Like I work in the medical field. I work with a lot of incredible women doctors. And continuing to say like a doctor is always a he just perpetuates that belief, right? And nurses are she. Well, no. I know a lot of great male nurses, and I know a lot of incredible female doctors. And so you're not limited based on gender anymore. So as much as Leo's going to be a savage and a legend, like so too can a little girl. And I know you're saying the same thing. It's
Yep.
been fun to like see how society is like adopted that, but still has maybe some room to improve.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of residue from past ideologies, I suppose.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, to think about raising kiddos to have audacious imaginations and conviction to be anything, right? And to almost to instill that spirit in them and then guide them and steward them along the way. Like what a cool time to be alive, what a cool role to be in as a dad, as a parent. And whether it's a boy you're raising or a girl you're raising, like um, the opportunity to become to truly become whoever you want to be is ripe for the taking if we set them up for success. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking two athletically minded, physically talented humans like yourself and your wife Katie. What kind of sports are your girls into at 2 and 4? What kind of things are they loving to do that you're like, oh,
uh,
that could we do we have a future, javelin thrower over here? What's going on? So what are you sensing they love to do? What do they actually love to do? And then what do you sense their future athletic trajectory is?
dude, I wish I had a great answer for you. My oldest Loxley is she has got like this body that makes me think she could be literally anything she wants. Um, she could do like dance, whether it's ballet or whatever, or gymnastics. She could play lacrosse. She could do soccer, but it's like what I'm paying attention to is like, what's your heart? Like, she is a tender-hearted kid. Like,
Hmm.
whatever, and that might change, right? She's only 4, gonna be 5. Um, so I don't know what her nature is gonna lead her towards. Um, but we're definitely keeping an eye on that. And then my youngest is like she's a brick shit house. Like she scares me. Everly, she's the one that like I had skin to skin with. That like she's my person. Um, and currently she loves to toot and you know like just make loud noises and crash shit into whatever she can find. So I don't really know, but it'll be fun. I think I personally I have this like fear that in a few years, Katie and I's lives are going to be dominated by running the girls to like this practice and that practice, and like we're just going to be two ships in the night who never see each other until 9 at night when we get done with practices and stuff. And I don't know that I want that. I obviously want to create opportunities for my girls to do whatever they want, whatever they're passionate about, and we'll make the sacrifices to make that happen. But I kind of hope that like they end up falling in love with golf and skiing and mountain bike riding, right? Like lifestyle sports that we can do as a family. Because, like, look, they're not going to play college football. And the bummer about college football is that, like, once you're done, once nobody wants you anymore, like, you don't get to strap it on a Saturday and go play in the park with your boys. Like you're done. So one of the reasons I reluctantly loved that my wife was a golfer is that she's kind of brought that into our family, and it's something that we're trying to teach our girls to fall in love with a little bit more because we just want to spend as much time with them as we can as they grow older.
So honest, be honest here. Hook or slice? Like which is it for
Oh,
you?
fuck, all of them, all over the board. I
I
can hit that thing a country mile, but whether it
exactly.
goes due north or due south, like your guess is as good as mine.
Exactly, dude. You got, I mean, that's the biggest qualm I have with golf is I just want to murder the ball, and I'm
Oh,
capable of murdering the ball, and then but accuracy and grace, they're
yeah,
out the
yeah, yeah. Um, hey, I'm looking at the clock. I'm thinking about your listeners and the fact that they probably have stuff to get onto like we do. But in the last few minutes, can I put you on the spotlight?
well, not the very last few, but you can hit me right now.
Okay. Um, Fireside Fathers.
Fireside Fathers. It's
Why
coming.
don't can I ask you to tease this out to the people
Yes.
listening and like just throw it out in the universe and
Yeah. Cool, cool. Okay, so off the cuff, anybody listening, just imagine, and it's been a treat for me to sit down, or right now we're standing, to stand here with my confidants and have these one-on-ones with dads. And a lot of the people I've interviewed, I've known for a chunk of time, and in some cases, like Colin here, we're brand new pals, right? So, but nevertheless, there's this rich exchange of ideas and just even just confiding. Maybe it's not rich ideas; it's just confiding in each other. Like, oh, that's fatherhood right there. And before I even started the podcast, I was like, what is this really, what symbolizes what this really is? And it's just bringing dads together, right? Bringing dads together currently in a virtual capacity, passively. You know, maybe there's 20 dads listening right now and they're like, I know there's another dad out there who would appreciate this topic, and I know these two guys do, but what if we were all sitting around a campfire together, committed to a weekend of fatherhood, um, fatherhood improvement, fatherhood deepening, and leaning on each other in a setting surrounded by nature and some fun activities, and maybe a little bit of a little bit of time to think deeply about what it means, and then the space to confide and share with each other. So that is Fireside Fathers. It's in the making. I'm pulling off a candid, low key one this summer, most likely, just like a camping weekend, probably locally here in Colorado. And then I'm working on, I already have logistics and a couple things sorted out for like a early June of 2025, and bringing people together, retreat style,
I love
folding in a few, not outsiders per se. They'll be dads, but a few experts in certain domains like survival, and
oh,
maybe
nice.
I've got a friend of mine who's also a leadership consultant, but he's a PhD clinical psychologist, and um, another guy who's I don't know, kind of like a master of the sweat lodge
Mm,
approach to things, and we're just going to incorporate a couple key aspects of the wilderness, fatherhood, and personal development coupled around a fire. So
dude,
that's that is happening.
you're singing my heart song here, man. I love the way you put words around that. I love what is on your heart in terms of what you want to build, and you got me. Uh, you got me hook, line, and sinker. And I hope that anybody listening is like, hell yeah, sign me up.
Well, and Colin, I got to give you a little bit of credit because you and I spoke, after first podcast, we probably spoke within the first week, I think it was, or week or two. And then we spoke again just to catch up and, build some rapport together. And it was probably a Friday like this.
Yeah.
And I literally hung up with you and spent the rest of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday mapping out the weekend retreat. Because
Yeah.
just the signal from the universe that um, a dad like yourself has the appetite for this conversation this initiative with Whoa Dad Go Dad and a gathering of dads, there's just something there, and I'm looking forward to creating that space for people. So, but now I get the last word, okay?
Ah, shit. Okay. Okay. Let's
So
hear it.
so I had asked you to set up this arrangement. What does it mean to be a legendary father? And your
Mm,
answer is a very humble answer, which I'm not surprised about. Now,
mm.
now I'm getting to know you. So I'm going to read it, but then I have a subsequent question. So, in your own words, in a sentence or two, what does it mean to be a legendary father? You say, I wish I had something beautifully profound and succinct. But at the end of the day, I just want my girls at my funeral telling everyone else there that they couldn't have asked for a more loving and supportive dad than me. Okay. So that's good. That's good. I like that. Now I want you to extrapolate that. They're at your funeral there. That's a good exercise. That's a really valuable exercise. But I want you to picture them actually telling stories to the future generations, their kids, maybe their grandchildren, about Colin Dow. What are the three things you're known for? And that might be one of them. He was loving and supportive. That's great. What else, or what does that really look like that your daughters are weaving tales about? So the three things that your daughters that they're telling future generations. I hear one of them. Give me two more.
Well, it sounds like something that I could really use a fatherhood fireside or fireside fathers weekend to think about more intently. But I think I want. There's a guy named Bob Goff who is an incredible man and written many books that have inspired me to kind of live a life that is important um, or inspired by things that I think are important. And he has done an incredible job of taking his kids out into the world and experiencing it fully and seeing different countries, different ethnicities, different cultures. And I want for Katie and I to expose our girls to that, to keep their minds open to possibilities and um, different traditions, different beliefs, different whatever it is, um, and let them kind of paint it onto themselves in a way that is true to whoever they want to be, right? So I want to expose them to those opportunities and cultures.
So mom and dad showed us the world.
Showed
Which
us the world.
beautiful. Okay.
Yep.
That's
Um, and then just because I'm blanking and I don't want to come off like a fool, let's just say that maybe we have another episode where I am post Fireside Fathers and I come to you with a third because I don't want to presume to have all the answers now. I'm still learning. I'm still, you know, I'm not fully baked.
all
And I
good,
think
all good.
there's got to be room to be creative and think about this. But I love and I respect and I am grateful that you are asking guys like me that question because I think it speaks to the value and the role of a podcast like this and the potential for some of the other things that you're thinking about. So
So your daughters are telling the world, telling the future generations, he was the most loving and supportive dad we could have asked for. We're so grateful for that. Digital thumbs up. And he showed us the world. Mom and dad showed us the world. They gave us rich experiences across the world, and that made us better people. And they're probably going to perpetuate that, and the ripple effect lives on. I don't know
well,
if
let me
there's a third. If there's the third
yeah
one, and you drop it in a text today to me,
yeah.
I'm not opposed to that. You
How
know,
about this? How about
Text-
this? I've been thinking in the back of my mind through the course of this conversation. You asked me one of the things that one of the father figures in my life taught me, and I can't help but think about my uncle Kenny, who despite not having like all the resources in the world at his disposal, always had an open door and always had a seat at his table for any of his kids' friends who needed to come in for a warm meal or just conversation, community, belonging. And I I would hope that they say something similar about me, that at my dad's table, there was always room.
I love that. See, we got there. We got there.
All right. Look at you, just needling along.
Colin, I appreciate your heart, your contributions, your time. Just exploring fatherhood with you is a treat. I can't wait to shake your hand and squeeze that large frame of yours in person. And I just thank you so much for your time, Roman.
Thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah,
Talk to you soon.
See you in the next one. There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah.